So what have you guys been up to recently?
Does anybody really care?
I don't know. It's
I
usually
don't.
it's usually how we start it. We just talk about our,
Yeah, well,
we get the small talk. We break out the
the
small talk.
small talk.
Yeah, yeah.
You bust out that normie shit.
That
Fine.
normie shit. How's the weather up there?
How's the weather? How are things? How the kids? How's the dog?
How's the kids? How's the wife?
Yeah,
How's the old
everyone's
battle
still
axe?
alive. But I don't know. Yeah, I'm all right. Just read up on a couple things I wanted to. I watched some stuff to just kind of get a basic idea. I'm kind of more interested in talking about the subject, which today, if you'd like to, I don't know if you want me to say what it is or if you wanted to
Uh,
say it or what, but
yeah, yeah. You know what? Go ahead. Go ahead. You got
well, it's
this.
well, I'm just saying we're gonna talk about chaos magic and what it means, and I'm guessing you guys are probably coming at it from various or different angles. Maybe you're more interested in certain aspects of it than others. I myself am going to be approaching it kind of from a more philosophical standpoint, um, more than anything else. I'm really interested in that and some interesting kind of personal revelations regarding this topic that might be fun once it's time for it to come up. So, but yeah, that's what I've been doing for the week, just kind of thinking about this shit a lot.
I guess like due to the nature of chaos magic, it's every perspective is going to be its own like
Yeah,
personal thing.
it's
So
kind of
yeah, this will
the
be
deal. Yeah.
yeah. Have either of you guys ever like fucked around with chaos magic before?
Yeah, I was actually part of an initiatory chaos magic order.
Really?
Never surprised.
Yes.
Anytime
Yeah,
Elijah says anything like I was a
not
part of
shocking.
like this thing and I have
Yeah.
this many like notches under my belt regarding this particular occult
Yeah,
thing.
I was part of a chaos magic order. At one point I was part of one that was an anti-fascist magic order, which was
Oh
kind of
hell yeah.
cringe, but we got some results. And
Did you get into any wizard battles with the Order of Nine Angles or something?
nah, we just
Hilarious wizard.
did some like I guess you'd say like baneful or whatever work against certain like far right public figures. We saw some limited success, but the more interesting one was I was part of a collective at one point doing reverse engineering the CIA's remote viewing projects.
Oh
Oh
hell
yeah,
yes.
it's
Holy
fun.
shit. Fuck
It's
yeah.
fun.
Yeah, so chaos magic can be
Chase.
a pretty strong system if a man knows what he's doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty
Oh,
sure I
just a
told
man? That's very misogynistic,
yeah, yeah,
Raven.
Yeah,
What about
well,
Come on
non-binary
now.
I
Come
actually
men?
do
on,
women.
Elijah.
So
Oh, okay.
you guys
All
all heard
right.
it first. The Madcast proudly endorses misogyny.
Uh,
I know I told Schizoid about this, but I don't know if I told you, Eli, that my friend got into the IoT recently, I am super
Oh,
proud for that. Yeah, yeah. She's got like a hot wizard lady teaching her.
very interesting. Tell our viewers who might not know. Tell them what the IoT is. I just realized
Oh,
we just dropped that shit.
oh, true. Yeah. Wait, fuck. It's the Illuminates of Thanateros. Am I saying that right? It should be.
I think so. Yes.
Yeah, they fucking what's his name? I really should have this on hand. They were founded by old what's his name, and they were kind of like one
old
of
what's
the
his name?
many old good old what's his name.
Yeah.
And they were one of the foundational like groups to kind of solidify and give form to chaos magic when it was uh like starting out because it's very like punk rock in that it just kind of rose up from a bunch of different sources all at the same time, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The old what's his name for the record? That's Peter Carroll,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
of the
Peter Carroll.
foundational figures of chaos magic.
Peter
I
J. Carroll, that's the guy. He wrote Libernal and Psychonaut, right?
Yes, Liber
Yeah,
and Psychonaut was written by
yeah.
him, which is super, super important text in the history of the tradition. Um, yeah, super cool guy, really interesting work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have been reading through it recently in preparation for this podcast, and There's some real interesting stuff in here. I personally like the ritual where you like once you die, you like reincarnate into another person's like into like some pregnant lady's baby, and then that's how you become like a master or some shit. I didn't really understand half the stuff that he was talking about because it's so convoluted, but
Well,
Yeah.
he's coming out of a very particular mindset, a very particular like worldview, one which embraces that sort of confusion, embraces that sort of complexity in a way that maybe other traditions that you might look at possibly don't.
yeah,
Um,
fair enough. Also, wait, let's real fast, let's try, I guess, to define what exactly chaos magic is before we go any
oh yeah.
further.
Yeah.
So chaos magic, from what I understand about it, because it is very complicated, but the basic concept is the idea that basically faith is the thing that moves mountains and shit, and you can use faith and belief as a tool to get shit done. It's very results oriented, and it centers around changing up your belief in specific things and building your own system. It's a very DIY form of magic.
Yeah.
It takes like the bare bones skeleton of various magical systems and kind of allows you to build your own theology around it in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Would you guys say that's accurate?
Yeah, I mean that's I would say in many ways. I mean, there's obviously a lot of detail in there, but yeah,
Yeah.
I would say that's
Yeah.
it's essentially what it's supposed to be. I mean, that's why it's weird to say, in my opinion, it's strange to say there's any kind of tradition regarding chaos magic. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it's like
It's your
it's
own. It's your own fucking tradition.
there's a name for that. It's anti. Uh, it's like when things like dogma, tradition, consistency of ritual is just kind of thrown out the door. Um,
Uh,
I can't remember the
in
term.
religious like terminology, you might call it a non-dogmatic
Yeah, but there's a
tradition.
different particular phrase. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I was going to say that, but I know there's a better word for it. It's an antinomial,
Antinomianism. Yes.
Antinomianism. Okay.
antinomianism. Yeah, there you go. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah,
That's the
yeah.
big smart word I
Antinomianism
wanted to
often
remember. Yeah.
denotes as well
Mhm.
people within a tradition who reject that tradition's traditional like perspective on law or morality.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
it's
and
very much that,
that's
but like
yeah,
wholesale.
it's kind of that the occult practice. That is the entire idea. It's fuck everybody else. Nobody else can tell me what to do. Fuck you, mom and dad. I'm gonna go make my own occult system.
Mom and dad. Like I mean, and you can take it further. I mean, it's fuck you, mom and dad isn't like
Fuck you, the
whatever gods or creators that have been
fuck
I've
you,
been
the
told I
platonic form of mom
yeah
and dad, the
yeah
archetype of mom and dad.
fuck you conventional understandings of what gnosis is and how it should be shaped and
Yeah,
like yeah I'm interested because I could talk about the philosophical stuff all day, but I'm actually interested, Elijah, like on some of the procedures that you guys would, because like I wonder what I'm curious about, because I don't practice. I'm just really into occult philosophy more than anything. And
fair enough.
yeah, I'm not, it's not that I'm bothered by it, just I have other interests. But I'm curious, how does one like practice chaos magic when in a group setting, right? And considering how highly subjective and non like there's no routine for it really, or there shouldn't be, at least.
I can give you personal experience in
Okay.
that I
Yeah,
can
both,
okay,
either one
so
of you. I don't have personal experience, but if you guys do, then I'd like to hear about it.
insofar as like group rituals go, I have participated in a couple of those. Mostly it has to do with a bunch of people wanting the same goal, but
Mm.
using their own means of achieving the word I
Oh.
think the word Peter Carroll uses is gnosis. And you have your own like method of achieving gnosis. So like the idea is that you kind of have to bring your brain into a state of equilibrium, and you can do that through like intense meditation. You can hurt yourself, you could go for a little jog. Most people just like to jerk off on sigils, though. That seems to be the most like common way of doing it.
Sounds so
But
basic, bitch. But
hell yeah, yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's a lot of ways to bring your mind into a state of gnosis, and it's kind of contentious as to actually what gnosis is. But the vast majority of occult systems do have this in common, where you have to get into a specific
head state. Oh.
yeah, like almost an altered state of consciousness. And so the type of stuff that I would do would be, I would have a friend, and my friend would make a sigil. They wouldn't tell me what the sigil represents, because that's also a big part of it. Like insofar as sigil building goes, which I'll get into later. But I would like go into gnosis, and I would focus on the sigil that my friend made, and then another person would focus on that same sigil doing their own thing, and all of that energy or whatever would build up, and it would make it more effective or some shit, basically. But that was how we looked at it.
Okay. What about you, Elijah? What is the perspective on how a group ritual would function with something like this?
So a lot of conversation in and around chaos magic is going to come in regarding like, I guess, technical questions about like gnosis, about things like that. But there's actually a fascinating cosmology that Carroll and company construct. And in this cosmology, beings that we would traditionally refer to as gods or what have you are all like originally in one mind, and then a group sort of belief complex emerges around them. And in this complex of belief, there are sort of internally consistent rules, right?
Is that what a god form is? Is that like the
A
idea
god
behind it?
form, an egregore, servitor, all these things. A servitor is, of course, more intended for one person, like your private usage or what have you. But a god form would be something like that. An egregore is another term that's often used as a sort of all-purpose generic for the. I'm going to keep saying tradition because there's chaos magic in the like brand or vein of Carroll and company, and there's chaos magic as like other things that people do that the people I worked with would not necessarily recognize as chaos magic.
Yeah, that's what's weird. Is like,
yeah, that's really weird. Just
no,
given,
to
like,
say that something's not recognized as something.
Yeah, isn't that the
so?
entire
There's people
idea?
who work in the strain of Carroll, and there's people who work in other strains, and they're all doing chaos magic. When I say it's not recognized, what I mean by this is they're all doing chaos magic. They're not all doing the same thing. And so there is like, again, there's a cosmology. Carroll presents a cosmology, and this cosmology is restricted. So, for example, there are certain magical practices which I did at one point, which if I wanted to go back to now with my current cosmological commitments, I theoretically could. Like it would be highly frowned upon, but I could do it.
But it would make sense within your current framework, basically.
Yes, within my current cosmology, it would make sense. Carroll's isn't one of them. With Carroll's idea that gods, spirits, etc., originate in one mind and are given sort of like, I mean, I don't mean to say worship points like it's literally a point system, but like worship points.
Just call it that. It's funnier.
They're like memes, basically.
Actually, they are exactly memes. Like it is exactly a mimetic theory on like I can't remember the term for spirit, pneumatogenesis. Like the origins of spirits. It's exactly a mimetic theory. The idea that humans have patterns which our brains are oriented towards. And so when we did our rituals and such, you talk about doing it in a group. we focused a lot on the concept of consensus reality. The idea that and the two groups I operated with, the less initiatory, more open sort of anti-fascist magic collective, and the much more initiatory, much more closed remote viewing collective. Which I still have some of my notes from that. I should have dug those out for this episode.
Where the
there's
fuck do you find people like this? I want to join. I
Like,
want
All
to
the
like
internet
undermine.
now,
I want to
they're
fucking
everywhere.
undermine the CIA with an occult group. That's so fucking cool.
well, we weren't like undermining the CIA. We were just like literally. So the CIA did remote viewing experiments back in the 60s and
Project
70s
Stargate.
under Project Girl Flame,
Girl
among
Flame and
others.
Stargate, yeah.
Yeah, Girl Flame, Stargate, Mockingbird.
Yeah.
All of those were remote viewing projects, and all those program files are declassified. The CIA kept doing them, but they declassified a lot of their procedure. And if, again, there's a reason why I said if you know what you're doing, you can reverse engineer them, because the methods the CIA was using are pretty raw tech. I'm going to use the metaphor close to the metal to mean, from the chaos magic perspective, not being draped in a lot of symbolism, not having a lot of references to specific gods or specific spirits or what have you. A lot of what the CIA was doing is pretty close to the metal, like pretty close to the metal.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you were to appropriate those, and let's say, for example, you were to create a sort of egregore, which, for listeners who don't know what an egregore is a sort of synthetic spirit with certain agreed upon qualities that a group
spiritual homunculus.
Yeah, it's like a spiritual homunculus. Like the group agrees that they will all pay heed to this spirit in a certain particular way, and in so doing, they change the spirit's like nature into existence out of non-existence. It's very complicated, and Carol writes a lot about it, and I recommend reading what Carol writes about it. But there is a so if you, for example, made an egregore which functioned as a sort of spiritual intranet, like a sort of nexus, you might say, into which things are plugged, and then each one of you connected into it, and certain people operated as beacons or hosts, while others operated as sort of clients or seekers. You would find yourself able to facilitate shockingly accurate remote viewing. Like, for example, the ability to tell what face card is in someone's wallet.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, or other really intricate, detailed, and also certain things about what spirits hang around a person, and other things like that, including spirits that person might not presently be aware of, which is quite interesting.
So theoretically speaking, if you wanted to create more beacons, you would have to make the egregore more powerful, correct? Or rather, if you wanted to make the egregore more powerful, you would have to create more beacons, right?
Yes. Well, anyone can operate as a beacon, right? Think of it as like when you used to do like private games on like Team Fortress 2 or something, where you would have a host and you would have clients.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you're all using the same server infrastructure, but your beacon functions as a sort of host, a sort of remote viewing host. And again, through the reason this is like essentially chaos magic is because, and I mean that to say, as in the essence of this practice is chaos magic, not just it is close to chaos magic, which is how it's, commonly used, but it is essentially chaos magic because all of the sort of like complex of beliefs are centered around egregores and cosmological conclusions and things that you all agree to ahead of time. We all buy in, we all do our ritual, we all give our dues to this spirit that, again, was like synthetic. Like we created it, we built her.
Yeah.
And when
So wait, what
when
if
we
you
did
were
so,
what
it
if you were to
worked.
what if you were to do something like, I don't know, spray a sigil representing that god for or that egregore on, I don't know, like a billboard or something on like a busy freeway where lots of people would see it? Would that enhance the power of that egregore?
Uh,
Yeah. I'm wondering, wouldn't they have to be conscious of what the sigil represents for that to be possible?
so in Carol's work, sigils work based on unconscious engagement. But
Mm.
I think it's worth noting that Carol is kind of unclear about whether or not someone who is not initiated into that sigil can cause its magical activation. He's he sort of indicates they can, but it also wouldn't match up with the rest of the way that it's supposed to work. So
Yeah.
let's say that we took the spirit, I keep almost saying her name, but in case one of my old like ritual mates is still working with her, I won't. But if someone were to take that spirit and put her name, like plaster her name on a billboard or something similar, um the which is funny because we anyway, if they were to put her name on a billboard, uh it wouldn't necessarily do anything unless people like sort of engaged with it mentally. So like let's say we had a spirit and she functioned as a sort of like again as this hub, as a sort of intranet, and this was one of like a Carol-esque egregore,
Yeah.
and her name was I don't know, Monica. um and Monica was like just Monica. Monica was like plastered all over this billboard, like some symbol of hers, her name, no information about her though. That might empower her. But if I just like put the word Monica up there, it might not, because it would instead conjure whoever it is you think of when you think of Monica.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which, if you
So,
think of Doki Doki Literature Club, then you don't remember 9/11, and if you think of Friends, you do.
um, well, my question on that would be that so would the vagueness, but the invoking of curiosity in the person that would look upon it as they drive by, is that what would empower it? The fact that they're engaging with it with like a sense of what is that, and they're trying to determine or decipher it, like that quick moment in which they're trying to do that, is that what would energize it more than if it was just Monica?
Um, I'm I don't
You know what I
know.
mean? You
Uh,
know what I'm trying to
I'm out
say?
of I'm out of practice, and also
Yeah.
it's like a lot of that stuff is very vague.
Yeah, I
Um,
figured.
we did not. I remember that we kept her existence something of a secret.
Yeah.
There are things that there are things that I'm not sharing, because if that
Yeah.
network still exists, it's still jacked into my spinal cord.
Yeah. You
So
don't want to fuck with
there's
that.
You're gonna get yoinked out like that guy from the Matrix.
Yeah, I'm gonna get you know that scene where like the ancient one like hits Doctor Strange and he like floats out of his body? That's gonna
Yeah.
be me, like if somebody like reverse engineers what I'm talking about.
I
But
actually
Yeah.
I actually had an experience which might give credence to what you were saying, which
yeah, go ahead.
now that I think back to the experience, I keep thinking about how like viciously manipulated I was. At the moment I was just like afraid, but like as the years go by, I think to myself like, oh, that was the point. So I, for a very long time, was heavily invested in this online ARG called Hakate Station, which I'm not going to get into too much detail about the ARG itself, but basically, there was um, a
Alternate
certain
reality game for those that don't know.
yeah,
Look it
like
up.
yeah, look it up, nerd.
Yeah.
Uh, so part of the ARG was having to figure out the name of we were given a certain Solomonic goetic sigil that represented the demon Murmur, and we had to go through, we had to figure out which demon it was, and we type in the demon's name, and that's the name to the code, and then we get access to the files, blah blah blah. A little while, I was like really heavily invested in this, so I had spent like several hours trying to figure out what this sigil represented. And then I was on, I don't remember which forum it was, but some guy was like photoshopping that exact sigil from the ARG onto just like random pictures, and then like just posting it around on the board. I for some occult nefarious purpose, I don't know what it was, but I saw that sigil, and like my brain made a connection between those two things, and it scared the living fuck out of me for some reason. And
Oh, interesting.
ever since then, I have like felt like a weird draw towards, like, I mean, I've always had a weird draw towards Goetia and Solomonic magic, but I've always said to myself, if I ever delve into that, I'm going to, I'm going to try out summoning Murmur first to figure out what the fuck that was all about. But the more I think about it, the more I realize, wait a second, this whole time I have been giving power to this guy's ritual just by my constant focus on this one sigil and this constant like fascination with this one specific demon. I've noticed this one specific demon will show up a lot in my art, and it'll show up a lot like in my dreams and stuff. So I'm thinking, maybe that was intentional. I don't. You're the occult expert, Eli. You tell me. What do you think happened to me?
So obviously, obviously, you are dealing with a demon in that case. Demons, I'm under cosmological obligations to tell you that demons absolutely exist independently of whether or not you believe they exist, whether or not you quote unquote give them power, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You are under an obligation at that point. However, I'm trying to find like a way to word this. The idea that you spent a lot of time like giving a lot of attention into, like a demon, and
Probably
then you turned
bad.
around and you suddenly had interactions with this demon, or your mind was drawn back to it or whatever. I could just as easily call it like psychological as I could call it anything else. So
Okay, fair
I
enough.
wouldn't like get too bogged down in it, but it is, possible that you just like put your brain on demon mode and then it continued to be on demon mode.
Activating demon mode.
Yeah, that usually means something else. Um,
Listen, I don't know what you kids talk about these days.
Shifting
well,
from gamer mode to
aren't I
demon mode.
older than you? Well, I should think.
You are.
Yeah. Okay, so
This guy remembers 9/11.
Yeah,
I always forget. I
actually
how
do.
old Schizoid
Yeah,
is.
I'm very old, 39.
Whoa.
I know, super old. But but I'm a zoomer at heart many times. I do want to talk a little bit about what I said earlier. I wanted to approach, because I wanted a little insight from Elijah and your guys' experiences, so I have a better understanding of what the personal experiences with that sort of stuff might be a little bit. But I want to talk about the more philosophical perspectives I have on just chaos magic as a whole, and
Yeah.
it's something that I kind of found interesting. So what I understand about
Give us the red pill.
Okay, I will. No, no. So what I understand about so much of this is that it seems to be based on a lot of kind of Nietzschean style uh, uh, active nihilism, um, or as I like to call it for myself, productive nihilism. it's this idea of high subjectivity, high relativism in the universe. No, no innate truths. No, nothing is actually grounded in any kind of like solid foundation. It's all up to the conscious interpretation of living beings, and so on and so forth. And and so that's why like I find the entire system fascinating, but also like somewhat contradictory. Just because like the I like the idea of having obviously any kind of system in place makes it, yes, it makes it not what it's supposed to be, chaos magic, but also by not having any kind of system in place, it's really hard to measure whether someone is doing it right or not, right? Even when it comes to like results, like because uh, you can like you said right now with the chasing the demon thing, it could be a demon, or it could be you ruminating on something. And so it's really really hard to sort of gauge, even if it is results based, the results themselves, right? And I'm not saying you have to. I'm not some like but I find all those elements and everything else to make it a kind of, it can be a little bit shaky in some ways, but also really fun. Because for me, I was just thinking, this is what popped into my schizo brain while you guys were talking. I started thinking about, because you mentioned not the egregores, you mentioned, oh Jesus, what were some of the words you said? It was egregore, uh,
Servitor.
servitors, yes. So I found that, like, because I had been thinking about this already, and so when you guys said servitors, I'm like, oh, that's right, that's another phrase for it. um is my connection to this, and hilariously to Warhammer 40k. So what I
Fuck
yeah
yeah.
I yeah
Fuck
well,
yes.
this is what's so great about it, right? So I it's funny because I know a lot of chaos magic ideas kind of derived and grew in like the British side of the occult world, right?
Yeah.
So and so what came from Britain as well, but Warhammer 40k. And of course you have the chaos, you have chaos energy and chaos and everything else going on in Warhammer, if you know anything about that. But what's funny is that if you can create these egregores, these servitors or whatever, out of essentially this ball of void, or whatever you would like to call it, you could essentially slot in basically any character, being, or entity that you would like, right?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
something that's like a meme. Like you could literally make
yeah,
an
Nurgle,
offering to Batman or
to
something.
Nurgle or
Yeah.
Slanesh or
Yeah.
even the Emperor of Mankind.
Yeah.
So and it's just funny because within the when you're talking about Warhammer 40k, the energy or the magic of that world is considered to be mostly based on kind of psychokinetic ability, right? The ability to reality warp and shift, and time and space with the power of this inner kind of power, or this almost faith-based power. That's why it's kind of interesting that a lot of when you're talking about space marines, or especially the sisters of battle, their faith actually gives them powers in that world. So just raw faith gives you powers and abilities to supersede the material world around you, whether it be through combat or healing themselves or whatever. And it's the same thing with the orcs, which the reason they're as powerful as they are is because they're so dumb that anytime they believe something is true, they as a group start putting so much energy into that belief that they actually warp reality in the battle, in small or sometimes very potent ways, depending on how many orcs believe that to be true. So if they put a red stripe on their car or their battle tank, they believe it'll go faster and work better. And because they all believe that, it does. And so and it's their lack of intelligence to believe otherwise, or to be convinced of otherwise, that makes them that much more powerful. And their abilities or weapons and everything, because they slap shit together and then they put all their belief in it, and then it's better and it's stronger and it's just as good as the technologically more advanced stuff that they're going up against. And But anyway, to kind of take it back to the real world here, I just I my personal experience that I found kind of like when I delved back into the subject of chaos magic, because the last time I had done that was probably like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17, like 17 years ago, right? I hadn't really kind of fucked with it too much. But what's weird is that I think I've been kind of this is weird to say. Can someone be a practicing chaos magician and never know it?
That's a
Certain
really good question.
Because like I feel like I've been doing that for a good portion of my life. If in fact there's any validity to all this, and I think it's really fun to think there is. Um,
I mean, there's a whole lot of oh fuck, what's the word? Where you think about something a lot, manifestation.
yeah,
you ever
yeah,
heard of like The Secret or whatever, that
yeah,
thing that
yeah,
you'll see
yeah.
in like Barnes and Noble?
Yeah, that's like
That's
chaos magic for
yeah,
Starbucks. Yeah,
that's
Starbucks chaos
yeah,
magic.
it's white girl chaos magic, like unironically.
No, but that's what's interesting is I would assume, I don't know, either of you correct me, but I would assume that to be a quote unquote good chaos magician, you have to kind of be in some respects philosophically an active nihilist. I can't see how somebody can be a chaos magician and not be.
Well,
Uh
I mean, isn't that like a big part of chaos magic? The at any given moment will change your belief in something else. It's
yeah, they call
like
it paradigm shifting. I think
yeah.
that's the technical term they like to use.
Yeah,
Paradigm
like
shifting.
from my understanding, like 1 second you'll believe in Yahweh or whatever, then 2 seconds later you can believe in Thor and Odin, and then 5 seconds later you can believe in fucking
Well,
Batman,
it's
and then
whatever ritual, whatever
Freddie
thing that,
Mercury.
yeah, whatever like symbol or entity that you have to this egregore you have to create based on yourself, your unique tastes and aesthetics, and then the thing that you're attempting to complete. Like that's all it is. It's like if you need black candles and an obsidian mirror because that's what you vibe with in order to do a certain ritual, good. If you like crystal balls, use that. If you just like to meditate, meditate. If you like to jack off, jack off. Like whatever works, whatever kind of energy functions with you is the way you can make these things manifest and so on and so forth. So yeah, I don't know. What do you
I
think, Elijah? Do you have to be a nihilist?
personally, let me not just say I left chaos magic.
Yeah.
Let me say that every single chaot I knew, chaot
Mhm.
being a chaos magician, every single chaot I knew eventually got glue trapped by a particular tradition.
That's so weird. I can never. And then it,
Paradigm
yeah.
shifting only works for so long. So even if all of us
Really.
were deeply shaped, and I'm sure we were by our particular like participations in chaos magic. Um, I know people now who have exited magic entirely.
Yeah.
Um, I know people who have exited magic to just be normies. I know people like myself who have exited magic for obligations that got us while we were doing magic.
Yeah.
like
And
they'll
I know
from
people who have
Uh,
stopped chaos magic and dug into I know a guy who the last time I checked in on him, he was really into some like Tibetan like weird Buddhist situation that he had going on. People have initiated into
yeah.
certain
Yeah.
African traditional religions and all kinds of other things because they were jumping around. They were trying this tradition, try that tradition, paradigm shift from here to there, and eventually they stuck with one. And this is again, I can't
Weird.
stress enough. This is a near universal.
I
I
mean,
don't know a
that makes
single person
sense,
who
right?
did chaos magic who
Yeah.
still does it.
No,
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense, right? Like you paradigm shift enough times, eventually you find a tradition that you just really vibe with, and you just want to do more of that.
Yeah. And it's worth noting that like the 23 current, right? Like that's an important part of that's a whole I'll get in the weeds if I go into the 23 current,
Yeah.
but the 23 current is an important part of sort of this, like I said, like Carolian like complex, this Peter Carroll or adjacent complex of magic. It's every eventually, I'm not going to say eventually you have to settle down, right? Like
Yeah.
obviously you could keep doing it forever, but I think that the cosmological, I don't want to call it nihilism, but yes, I do.
Mhm.
The sort of cosmological, let's call it rootlessness. How about that? The cosmological rootlessness
Sure.
of chaos magic lends itself to people exiting the tradition
But
and exiting quickly.
so that's what's interesting. Look, I might sound crass if I say this. This might be a hot take, but that sounds to me like these ones that get rooted, like you said, that sounds to me like one could consider them failed chaos magicians.
Oh,
And
and absolutely you could.
and also I'm starting to think that if you wanted to be an actual chaos magician, I'm starting to think that that rootlessness is something that you have to embrace and actually be able to enjoy and take part in. And it has to be something natural and good to you for you to be able to successfully even go down this practice. In
So
any,
wait.
yeah.
Sorry, but like, wait a second. What if your what if your framework and your route involves a kind of holistic, all-encompassing approach to various traditions? What if you believed in something like fuck it, like I take a very I'm like, my personal system is heavily inspired by Neoplatonism, and I take a lot of, like, because of this framework that I have built up for myself, which takes inspiration from a lot of different things, actually. I can move around between traditions without like compromising my own belief system. So what if you just had an all-encompassing viewpoint? What if you had a very eclectic viewpoint on things and you took root in that instead of just like paradigm shifting? Is there really a difference between those two things?
I don't think there is, honestly. Like, because I mean, like I would consider myself to be very eclectic, very when it comes to everything and anything, especially when it comes to philosophical or spiritual matters. But I'm also, but that's I guess that weirdness, because if you it's that whole issue with people associating nihilism and the belief that that your beliefs don't matter or no one's does because none of it matters. Like that's
Yeah.
not really I don't consider that. That's why I always say active or I like to say yeah, active nihilism, which is embracing that and then still moving forward, and then in fact it actually can make your faith in the things you believe in that much stronger, right? Because you know you're the one that's giving it power, and if you it's up to you whether that belief has any strength in the universe, because you're the only thing holding it up, though you and everyone else that would have that same faith in something. And so I can see what you mean, but it could be the same sort of thing. Like how can you have, if you believe, like if say if you believe the entire pantheon of every religion, every being is just as valid as any other um all the time, then what I mean it's still kind of, I don't know, it still sounds like a sort of, because how can you have a cosmology like that's consists of everything and anything anyone could ever imagine ever be totally valid and not be essentially rootless
I mean,
or nihilistic in that
the
sense.
the way that I like to look at it personally, and this is just me, so take that with a grain of salt. But the way that I look at it is that essentially every deity and every practice and every blah 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 is reflective of specific archetypes that exist within the psyche
Yeah.
and at specific times. So, like, let's say one day I wanted to worship Thor. Thor exists as an archetype that existed and still exists for many people today. And then if you go from that to the idea that things that exist here materially are reflections of things that exist on a, I guess, like higher level, as above, so below, blah blah blah, then essentially the fact that it exists down here in the psyche means it exists up there in
Yeah.
Roma, as the part of the divine whole. So that by that logic, Thor would exist, fucking Zeus would exist, blah 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 would exist. And you could
So
leap between them while still respecting Pleroma as like one single divine whole, and respect all of these things as parts of that divine whole.
so this works really well as long as you're jumping between polytheisms.
True. Yeah.
This does not work so well if, for example, you try to integrate a tradition which has many gods, a god of the sun, a god of the moon, a god of the water, a god of the land, and the statement La ilaha illallah, there is no
Yeah.
god but God.
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden you have a contradiction.
Yeah, exactly.
And another thing that's interesting is while there are historical precedent of like persons observing multiple kinds of polytheism, these observances tend to be based on regionality, on locality. So wow, look at that. I got like signal jammed there for a second, but in my mouth.
Ooh.
For
Uh-oh.
example, there is a common thing in the old days of the Levant in the Middle East, where if I'm in Babylon, I worship the god of Babylon. If I'm in Ashdod, I worship the god in Ashdod. If I'm in so on, right? If I'm on Cyprus, I worship the god of Cyprus. So much so that in the Bible, one of the things that I can't remember who it is, but he's being exiled from the land then called Israel. And he says, will you send me away? Will you force me to worship foreign gods? And so when you see these examples historically of multi-observant polytheists, it's because they're in a different place. So sure, you can do Thor and you can do Zeus. You do Zeus when you're in Greece and you do Thor when you're in Scandinavia.
I
But
actually, but like historically speaking, that's not really. I mean, yeah, that was how a lot of people viewed it, but also you will see a lot of instances where gods will shift pantheon, like the Greeks, they adopted the Egyptian Isis, for example. The Romans would kind of run around and they would conquer different places, and they would say, oh, yeah, you believe in this guy, yeah, sure, I'll adopt this god into the pantheon, and then that way the empire can be stable because we all worship the same gods.
Well, it's funny. It's like Rome was conquering other people's gods and making them Roman. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like the citizenry that they would find. It's
Yeah.
like, oh, you're now Romans, and your
Yeah.
gods are now Roman.
But
well,
that also
I gotta speak to the Roman pantheon thing. First of all, Rome had magicians and priests who worked for the military, who were called invocatio, who were, which literally means like the in speakers, like the inward speakers, whose job it was to uh, go up to the city that they were laying siege to and do religious rites in the Roman style for the god of this city so that this god would favor the Romans instead of the people in the city.
Yeah, they
holy
would
shit.
make that
And
god.
it
They're
is
making the
Holy
god
shit.
Roman. Yeah.
this is
Holy
something that's
shit.
important. This is something
Yeah.
that's important. Let's say that we come from a city and this city is called, Shelcus or whatever in Latin. I just made up noises. It's called Shelcus. And we follow like a god of craftsmen because we're a city known for our bronze work. When Rome pulls up, they're not going to see our Shelcus and go, "Oh, we have like our god, whatever his name is, of the city of Shelcus," and go, "Oh, we have him too." What they're going to pull up and do is they're going to do the invocatio, and then they're going to call him Vulcan Shelcus.
Yeah.
They're going to call him the Vulcan of the craftsman god of the Romans of our city. So you see this happen all over the place. Of course, in the
Yeah.
Mediterranean complex, there was a bit of exchange as Alexandria in Egypt was a Greek city, effectively Greek and Jewish city, and so some of the gods that were exchanged in the Heliopolis complex worked in that way. But especially Hermanubis. This is a really interesting one. They would sort of meld Hermes and Anubis into Hermanubis.
It's like a
I love
But
that. I fucking love
again,
that.
this
fucking
That's
is
such
like
a
Pokemon,
funny.
dude.
oh, and if you want to know something even crazier, Hermanubis had like winged feet and like a dog's head, and as
Hilarious.
such would later be syncretized with Saint Christopher.
Oh my god, that's so
Um,
fucking cool.
because Saint Christopher had a dog's head. But
Hermanubis.
anyway, all of this to say, um, ancient polytheism was able to do this because it was, you know, as far as we can tell, broadly accepted that when I am in a new place, I am under the jurisdiction of a new god. For the modern reader of the paradigm shifting texts, as written by Carroll, as written by his name escapes me now. Is it Hine? I don't remember. Anyway, as written by these like giants of the chaos magic tradition, and I do insist it's a tradition, giants of the chaos magic tradition, these readers are often coming from monotheistic complexes. As a matter of fact, statistically, most people on Earth come from monotheistic cultures.
Yeah, fair enough.
And so when they're doing this, you can do like polytheism. Like I can say, like, you know, Thor is the god of lightning, but so is Zeus. And I'll just shift back and forth based on what ritual I'm doing. That doesn't work so well if one of the paradigms you're shifting into is monotheism, because then you've
Yeah.
shifted into a paradigm in which your previous paradigm shift was forbidden, in which all your previous actions were forbidden because you confessed that there was a god besides the one god.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of the reasons why people migrated out. Very, very distinctly, I remember two of my friends from the old order um, migrating out of chaos magic and into Catholic folk magic, something they were both raised with. And in so doing, renouncing all works of the devil.
Well,
Right. And by doing so, they had renounced all previous magic they had participated in,
I,
even though maybe they did not necessarily view it at the time as works of the devil. They recognized that as
I
a result of the fact that they were committing to this tradition, they had to.
would
So,
argue, but
like,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, that's it. Like, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Like, yeah.
but I would argue that I'm taking like super devil's advocate on all those because I'm
No,
really
yeah,
interested.
you're good.
I would argue that those people, they got caught up in a pitfall, a philosophical pitfall, because there's some presuppositions there that aren't necessarily true if in fact you are attaching yourself to this kind of highly what's the word? But I mean, whatever, a rootless. I say nihilistic, but rootless um set of beliefs that are attached to chaos magic in and of itself, right? So if you paradigm, this is what's interesting is I don't understand why the interpretation of the deity or being that your paradigm shifting into is going to be held under the laws, or why would it even be a contradiction? Because that's a contradiction based on the religious beliefs and the doctrine of the human beings that worships that deity. Right?
I actually have I have a follow-up to this. There are okay, so take for example Kabbalah, for example, which recognizes all of these different aspects of God. The Sephiro, right? A friend of mine is a practice or was a practicing Kabbalist, but they would also recognize the various emanations of God, and under that specific framework, they would be able to recognize the totality of the singular God while also recognizing and differentiating between the various I guess you could call them like emanations of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I
yeah.
Oh, I was just going to say that I think it's worth noting that within the context of chaos magic, you are supposed to take on the system you're coming into fully.
Mm-hmm.
And it does not really draw a line between things people say about the system and the system itself. So, like, if it's a monotheistic system, it does not draw a hard line between it is a
Wow.
monotheistic system and it is a monotheistic,
Is that
the system does not work without monotheism.
is that pretty conventional? Is that like a I guess a set or a system within chaos magic that is understood that when you take up a say a certain deity, a specific deity, you have to kind of function under the system of that deity that already pre-existed before your use of it. Like you have to actually use their methods in order to communicate with or use that deity as an egregore. Like that's a
Uh,
requirement.
in the Carolian tradition, yes. So
Oh,
like
okay,
in
I don't
Peter
like
Carroll's
Carolian.
work,
I don't like
in Peter Carroll's work, in I think his name is Phil Hine. Like I keep coming back to this name Hine, but I could be wrong.
No, Phil Hine, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, Phil Hine, Peter Carroll, they wrote like a complex of works. This is sort of when we're talking about chaos magic and we're talking about it in its sort of most well-known form, its most popular form.
Yeah.
I'm referring to it as Carolian in order to distinguish it
Yeah.
from possibly other like
Yeah,
forms.
it's just
But
that sounds so limited though. The Carolian one you're describing, it sounds
it is
limited.
super not if you are able to do that thing you're talking about, where you are a sort of where you maintain a sort of spiritual wanderlust, where you maintain the ability to put on a coat and take off a coat, and so on.
No, yeah,
I
I
will
know, but
say
the
that
contradiction exists. If you can't put on the monotheistic coat and properly do it, and because you know what I'm saying, because you're already acknowledging that there is more than one God. And so once you put on that coat, then you already fucked it up. You already fucked up that coat.
Not
well,
necessarily, because if you are just constantly shifting and then you are believing full-heartedly in the thing that you are practicing in that moment, and then you shift and you can believe in this other thing full-heartedly, there wouldn't really be a contradiction so long as you have complete control over what you're believing.
No, but I'm talking about as far as like adhering to that particular system fully. You can't really do that. You can't shift out of that, because if you shift out of it, then it just
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, if you were to shift out in and out of, like, say, Christianity, then you were never really practicing Christianity.
yeah,
Is
of
that,
course you don't,
yeah.
because you can't shift in and out of a Christian system. Like that doesn't work, and then
so
be fully dedicated or fully engaged in it.
so this is why I brought up the vast majority of people in the world are coming out of monotheistic cultures. Carroll and Hine are British. If memory serves, Carroll and Hine are British, and came out of a super monotheistic culture. You're talking about Great Britain, the exponent of Christianity around the world for the past 800 years or however long. And so the resistance that chaos magic has to the consensus reality, to this like idea that people fall into these patterns of flow where they no longer question the world around them or what have you, those things, they are a resistance to the dominance of a monotheistic culture. The incompatibility of chaos magic with true monotheism is not, and when I say true monotheism, I mean like not people who are like, there's one God, but it has a million faces. That's like Hindu monotheism, but they don't consider themselves monotheists. So it's, whatever. When you have this like true monotheism and you don't have compatibility with it in chaos magic, this isn't a coincidence.
It's
Not
intentional.
remotely.
It's
Yeah, but
so
that's
so
only in a
so
Carol
It's
style.
a form of resistance to
okay.
the dominant monotheistic paradigm.
I see. Okay, so what you're saying is that chaos magic by nature is incompatible with these true monotheistic, explicitly Abrahamic belief systems, because they arose within, oh Jesus, within a and as a, I don't want to, I don't, like, as a more as a protest to those religions.
What if you
Um,
oh, sorry.
oh, go ahead. No, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying, like, what if, okay, so let's just say we step away from Carol. Like, what if, like, someone like myself just dissolve, like, stops caring about the methods and systems that the humans that are attempting to worship these, entities that are just actually just conceptual representations of ideas that have no actual body, have no consistency. They're just ether in a way, and then you just approach all that stuff as that. Like that's what's weird. Like what would that be? Would that be some variant of chaos magic, or would that just be something else entirely? Like practicing, I don't know, rituals. Like how do I worship Nurgle or Slanesh if they're fictional?
I would call it chaos magic, but not like Carillion chaos magic. Like it
Yeah,
would be your own little
Carol,
like homebrew thing.
I would counter it. Carol and Hein both make space for that. If
yeah,
you
but
want
how
to
do you
worship
do it?
Slanesh, if you want to
Yeah, how?
worship Nurgle, then you would just find ways within the like coherent system that you're
That's
drawing
the
them from.
fictional system that a bunch of people that wrote science fiction created and have
Correct.
absolutely no faith
Correct.
in.
You would then use that, and in your lending of power to it,
Oh man,
that
that's
would be
dangerous.
a
It's so based.
That's very
Why don't you do
dangerous.
that?
You
Why
can't
don't you?
properly, you but no, you like the only way to properly like, and I'm not condoning this at all in any way, shape, or form. The only way to properly like say worship Nurgle would be to like, I don't know, like set off dirty bombs or something. Like that would literally be like like anything that spreads disease and virus and death and plague, and you'd have to actively like take part in it and embrace it. That's like the way you worship Nurgle.
Oh
So
god. Oh god.
I would
like,
say
In Minecraft,
I know. I'm
in
just saying.
Minecraft.
What
I'm just
Slanesh would
throwing.
be, yeah, just violence and sex and
Okay, yeah.
violence.
Let's not talk about what that would imply for Slanesh, because
Yeah,
we're gonna
that's what
go
I'm
into some real
saying.
bad
Or if
places.
you're talking core, it would be war. Like it would
The
be like what
these
is it?
gods.
Skulls?
To be
Was it
okay, look.
skulls for the skull god? Like
To
that
be
would be the
fair, these
yeah.
gods were literally designed to be as dark and edgy as humanly
Oh, I
possible.
know for sure.
Practitioners.
But
So if you
couldn't you be in like the military and enjoy like be bloodlust filled and enjoy the killing you're doing and do it in the
you
name of corn? Like it
I
just
think you probably could.
you could, but like, why the fuck would you do that?
skulls for the skull god. Blood for
Hey,
the blood god.
hey guys, what if I became a fucking sociopath? Have I what you know, what if I just like went
Well,
crazy
no,
and
there's a
decided to
god
do
for
horrible
socio.
things?
There's a god for like nihilistic psychopaths in Warhammer, which is the hidden god, which is what's his face, the fifth hidden
Yeah,
demon. Yeah, Malice.
Malice, yeah.
Yeah, Malice wants to get rid of all. He wants to get rid of the Emperor, the universe, all humans, the demons. He just wants to fuck everything up. Yeah, that would be that would
Honestly,
be
look, I'm gonna
Malice.
be on like I'm gonna be real.
Yeah.
Within the context of Warhammer 40K. Within the context of
No, the
Warhammer
British
40K.
tradition. By the way, that's a British tradition. Warhammer 40K is a British tradition. Go ahead.
It
Maybe
is a
maybe
monotheistic culture, even.
Yeah.
maybe Malice has a point within the context of Warhammer 40K. If Warhammer 40K was my
The
reality,
universe? Yeah, Malice
I would just want everything to be gone too. Like I'm gonna be real.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. The
Okay,
afterlife's terrible. Everything's terrible.
I would live as an orc though. Those orcs are having the
Oh,
time of
orcs are
their
the
lives.
that's what you want to be. You want to be an orc.
Yeah. If I was born
Happiest
into the
fucking
40K universe, it's
happiest
literally
motherfuckers. They're just happy all the fucking time. Yeah, they're the best. I
I
don't know
will
how we got
say
here.
that
Yeah.
let's say hypothetically, because you say, oh, in order to worship Nurgle, for example, you might have to do some sort of act of bioterrorism,
Yeah, it's
left
horrible. Yeah.
intentionally vague here by the author. But there is
in
you would have to do some
Minecraft.
act of bioterrorism in
Well, I
order
mean,
to
that's what
worship.
they're doing to worship him in the fiction.
Right. So,
yeah.
and I would support. No, I would support that. I would support you.
All right.
Okay,
I would support.
Okay, how about this? Couldn't we do like a like? Okay, wouldn't be the safe? Okay, let's just say the safer, less like over the top version of Nurgle worship would be to have a flu and then spread it as much
And
as
sneeze
possible.
on people. Right. Let's say.
Yeah.
Let's say
or
that
just
you
to
decided
not wash your hands, wipe your saliva on.
I mean,
handles.
well, honestly, no, that's what like modern day Norse pagans, for example, will do. Because like back in the day, you know, they would like sacrifice a horse or something. But like, bitch, I don't got a horse. I don't got the money to buy a sword and then bury it out in the woods or some
What are they
shit.
killing
You know what
like
I mean?
raccoons and possums and shit?
No, I'm not gonna. And I don't even want to do this.
I don't
So,
either. I don't.
so
Okay,
like,
let me cut back to the Nurgle thing.
Yeah, I'm curious.
Let's say that you're a worshiper of Nurgle. You've done the effort to obtain sort of Nurgle gnosis, and you're worshiping this kind of
Nurgle gnosis.
There
egregore.
is a Nurgle gnosis. She's right. Yeah.
You're sort of worshiping this egregore that has come of Nurgle.
Yeah. Disease and pestilence.
We phrased this as though it was utterly shocking and incomprehensible that someone would do that. I would argue that you're doing chaos magic really fucking well
oh my
if you're
God.
doing something like sneezing on people like that in order to like devote yourself. The thing is, the reason you're doing chaos magic so well is because you actually believe it.
So super spreaders or the ultimate Nurgle worshippers during COVID-19 epidemic?
So real.
No,
actually.
fuck. Do you remember Corona-chan?
I do remember Corona-chan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Corona-chan
She
was
was just a Nurgle.
Well, no, she was an egregore. She was essentially like a 4chan meme god, basically, or like fucking.
It's funny you mention 4chan meme gods because
Keck, right?
Yeah.
Keck, yep,
yeah.
Keck was actively a 4chan meme god.
Yeah.
Do you think, and getting into the insanity portion of things, do you think that the election of Donald Trump was brought about by a mass occult ritual?
I'm going to go ahead and say that I have previously taken oaths which forbid me to directly comment on this.
What the fuck?
What? That's amazing. I was gonna say,
what kind of answer is that?
Well, he can't answer it. That's so
I can't be explicit, but I needed to say something in a way that our viewers would understand. By which I am saying I cannot explicitly answer this.
Yeah, well, I would say if you
the most ominous thing I've ever heard.
Have you ever watched that one animator that his video got taken down, I think, or he took it off and then he put it back on? The one that does like political, it's a little more left leaning, but he does like political animations that are just like absurd and like horrific. Where he'll get like political figures and like turn them into like monstrosities. Like it's 3D like animation, and like he just turns into like he did this one where it was like a Trump 2024 thing. I don't know what it was, but basically it was like it reenacted it was like a political what's that convention? The I guess it would be the conservative kind of convention.
CPAC.
Yeah, no, is it CPAC? I think it was, or it was y'all, or I don't know. But point is, it was one of those, and it turned into the eclipse ritual from Berserk, almost. Like it was like the eclipse ritual with like the hawks, but it was like to ascend Trump to his to this like occult throne, and they had to consume the blood of their worshippers and all this shit. Like it was. Man, I have to show you. It's sometime. It's really good.
Send it to me whenever you find it.
So let's say that you were like, in the U.S. government, or you were someone very rich and powerful, and you wanted to harness the kind of forces that chaos magic occultists have discerned are in fact harvestable, are in fact harnessable.
Yeah.
And let's say that you wanted to harness these for something actually useful and not just like getting yourself money. You already have money. You want to get something strong. You want to get power. You want to get information, for example. If I was in the government and I wanted to get strong amounts of information, then I would go out of my way in the 1960s and 70s to bring a bunch of occultists into my intelligence agency and pay them to get me information.
Yeah, I know. But what's really funny is I was thinking about like I imagine if like the entire like the pillars of, because they always say this in conspiracy stuff, but imagine if all the pillars of power and everything else are just under like they're all based on an occult foundation, like for real, and they're like you have a bunch of like, let's just say, oh, we need information. There's like just hidden wizards in like intelligence agencies fighting each other in their like underground chambers. Like it's just so
look. all I'm gonna say is that there is a really mysterious amount
So
of
funny.
secret society members
I
in
know
and
they're
involved
all
with
chaos
intelligence
magicians. They're
agencies.
just all chaos
Like
magicians battling it
in
out.
intelligence
Okay,
agencies have a very ominous amount of wizards. Like, I'm just gonna be
A
honest.
lot of
I'm going to
wizards.
say this. First of all, intelligence agencies overrepresent certain communities. I'll give you an example. In the United States, there are a ton of Mormons in the CIA and FBI, tons of Latter-day Saints. The immediate thing you might say is, oh, is there some kind of a cult or power-based connection between the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and like the FBI? The answer is the FBI and CIA needed communities that they could look into where everyone would pass a background check, where they
Okay.
didn't have to worry about anyone using drugs. They didn't have to worry about any of
Oh,
that.
that's so interesting. Yeah.
Now, the thing you might notice is,
Mhm.
let's say that you're a particularly patriotic American and you want to know exactly that the people in your intelligence agencies that your government is funding are definitely only loyal to the United States. And I want to go ahead and say, dear listeners, that dual loyalty as a like conspiracy theory or allegation has a very harmful history in the U.S. to
Oh
religious
yeah.
minorities, including Catholics, Jews, and indeed Latter-day Saints. But let's say that those individuals had, I don't know, something like their own president, who they considered temporal authority above the American president.
Yeah.
This might be cause for concern for someone. However, those people have already been recruited so en masse that they filled out the entirety of the power structure of that intelligence agency.
Hilarious.
This
That's
was an
hilarious.
actual problem in the FBI to the point where
Yeah.
the Supreme Court heard a case
Yeah.
uh, discussing openly what was being referred to in the agency as the Mormon Mafia, which was that the CIA was so full of Mormons. So whenever you're looking at something, and by the way, in case you're thinking that this might just be a US phenomenon, you should look at how absolutely overrepresented the Alawite ethnic minority is in Syria's federal government and always has been.
Okay, but
Oh,
like
so there's going to be a
here's the
bunch
thing
of
though.
religiously orthodox people in all the intelligence agencies all over the world. That's
Here's
so
the
Or
thing
funny.
just
though.
people from minority communities because they're likely to know each other because there's
Yeah.
less of them.
Well,
Yeah.
okay,
So
Go
it's
but
ahead.
not
Go
like a
here's
ahead.
malicious,
Yeah.
conscious conspiracy. It's just that they know each other and they
Yeah.
recruit from communities that they know will be useful and
Yeah. No,
loyal.
I know.
well,
I'm kidding. Go
here's
ahead,
the thing
Chase.
though. Here's the thing though. Like once you have that many of that specific religion of people within those positions of power, I don't see why they wouldn't serve their own interests though
Yeah.
at that point.
I mean,
So at
do you
that
I'm
blame
looking
point,
them? Do you
directly at the
blame them?
camera.
hmm?
There is reason. The lawsuit that was alleged by the members of, get this shit, a Southern Baptist being able to rightfully sue the federal government for being discriminated against as a religious minority. That's how many like Mormons, I almost said Muslims. There are very few Muslims in the FBI. That's how many Mormons are in the FBI. And so they are serving, in some sense, their own interests, but not again,
That's
this
so
is not a
funny.
malicious thing. They're just, it's just that these were the guys that don't smoke, don't drink, don't cuss, don't crime. And so when,
Yeah.
famous anti-communist and possible homosexual J. Edgar Hoover was
Possible homosexual.
that's actually like a
Possible
significant part of his lore.
homosexual J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh no. Hey.
Every time,
I like saying possible homosexual because it makes me sound like a homophobic 50s politician.
every time someone
Um,
refers to me from now on,
Possible
I am
communist.
begging you to refer to me as possible homosexual Chase Foxwell.
Yeah. Possible.
but yeah, I want to cut back to the magicians thing.
Yeah.
We don't have to theorize as to whether or not, and this isn't going to be like dudes in secret basements, blah blah blah. These are just going to be consultants, basically. Particularly post Rumsfeld, because Rumsfeld, had this contention that the U.S. military was like the best military in the world, and there was no reason it wasn't turning a profit. And so he was willing to outsource a lot of the U.S. military's intelligence and ground force capabilities to private contractors such as Blackwater. Nothing bad would ever happen because of this. And when Rumsfeld did so, we can then see a bunch of consulting firms be brought on. The US government also somewhat like they weren't really hiding this. When Grill Flame and Stargate and so on ended, private contractors picked up some of those like activities. So the idea that there are wizards in the US government is less of a conspiracy theory and more of a just, are you willing to make the very, very small leap that perhaps the US government did not get rid of all of its psychic assets after the 1960s and 70s?
So funny.
Oh.
There's psychers. There's literally Warhammer 40K psychers.
Literally Warhammer psychers. Now, and I'll tell you what they were using them for. They were using them to spy on remote positions used by the Russians. Which, well, I should say the Soviets, but whatever.
Yeah, Soviets,
that's what they were trying to use them for, which again, like it's the most comically Cold War thing that you can think of. Like, let me hire psychers to see.
It makes the stories. It makes the stories about putting cameras on cats seem like sane. Like that seems more sane to me than like it, or just just funny. It's just, oh my god,
yeah,
so funny.
Well, and this is like, unfortunately, like I say unfortunately, but I find it really fascinating. Unfortunately, the US government, like, they're willing to admit to this stuff. Stargate, Grill Flame, Mockingbird, these things are declassified.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I have a bunch of the PDFs on my computer, like tons of them at this point.
Yeah, if you go back and review the Grill Flame procedure, and you'll see what I mean about it being shockingly easy to reverse engineer.
Yeah,
but
same. I like the Mars astral projection or the remote viewing on Mars stuff.
I am going to cut in here and say that it's we're going over. I've been trying to keep it to about an hour 30. And that's
we're hitting hour 30 right now.
All right, but
we can cut off with our last word of advice to our viewers that the U.S. government has Mormons and wizards at the highest levels.
Wizards and psychics. They're out there. They're in there. They're hiding. They're watching you. Never forget.
What is it? IRL, the wizard. What's that shit called? The Wizard Money Gang is real.
Wizard
Wizard Money.
Yeah, they're real. And it makes sense that they mention nukes in that because that's literally it is the shadow government. The shadow government has wizards and they want to.
We love casting spells.
And they do. All right.
All right.
I gotta go
subscribe, hit that motherfucking bell button.